Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. If you're new here, consider subscribing. It really helps keep these stories coming. And while you're here, let me know in the comments where you're listening from. Now, sit back, relax, and let's get into the story. I've spent most of my life learning how to disappear. Not socially, physically, out in the wild. You put on a ghillie suit, and the world forgets you exist. The grass doesn't question you. The wind doesn't acknowledge you. Even birds won't spare a glance unless you move wrong. And when you've mastered the art of stillness, you become something else. A shadow that breathes. That's who I was, Sham. I was stationed at a remote observation post deep in the highlands. My mission was standard. Watch a stretch of uninhabited valley suspected of being used for, let's just say, unauthorized crossings. Days could go by without a single soul on my scope. I didn't mind. Solitude is a sniper's best friend. I had no idea the world was falling apart just over the ridgeline. At 6:04 a.m., I received a scrambled transmission. I was tucked beneath a patch of thorny brush with my rifle balanced on a moss-covered boulder. I remember the exact time because my scope had a digital readout, and I had just zeroed in on a cluster of movement near the tree line. Observer 1, report status. Possible biohazard, repeat biohazard. Maintain position, do not approach civilians, engage only if directly threatened. That was all. Then static. Biohazard? What did that even mean? My first thought was a chemical spill, maybe something airborne. I activated my sealed mask, switched to internal oxygen, and hunkered down. Protocol. The wind howled low through the trees like it knew something I didn't. It wasn't long after that when I saw my first one. He came stumbling through the valley alone, staggering like he'd been injured. I adjusted the magnification on my scope. Male, civilian clothes, dried something crusted down the front of his shirt. I assumed blood, just not his. His movements were strange, jerky, uncoordinated, like someone trying to walk in zero gravity. Then he stopped and tilted his head up. Even from 200 meters away, I saw his eyes. They were wrong, clouded, glassy, and his skin, patchy, grayed, like rot setting in. I radioed command, nothing but static. I marked the time, 6:47 a.m. And then I saw another one, and another. By 7:30 a.m., there were at least 14 visible from my position. Some walked with a limp. Others dragged themselves across the field with broken limbs. One had no lower jaw but still kept moving forward like it didn't matter. None of them screamed. None of them groaned. It was the silence that chilled me. At 7:52 a.m., a family in a minivan came down the narrow mountain road leading toward the valley. I reached for my radio, frantically trying to hail someone, anyone. Nothing. The minivan came to a stop as two of the things ambled into its path. The father, he must have been the driver, stepped out. He shouted something I couldn't hear. Probably thought they were lost hikers. Then the closest one lunged at him. It didn't attack with rage, it didn't snarl. It simply fell forward like a puppet with strings yanked too hard and started doing things that I won't describe. I had a clear shot. I lined up my crosshairs and fired. One round, suppressed, clean. The creature dropped instantly, but it was too late. By the time the rest turned their attention to the van, the mother inside was already screaming. The children, I saw their faces through the window, were frozen. Wide-eyed, terrified. I took out two more, then my bolt jammed. By the time I cleared it, the van's windows were red. I lay there, my breath fogging the inside of my mask. There are moments in a sniper's life that change you. Not the shot, not the silence after, but the helplessness, The cold, creeping realization that you are alone and the world is not what you thought it was. At 8:19 a.m., I packed up and began moving through the brush. I didn't have orders, no contact. I needed a better vantage point and answers. There was a communications relay 3 clicks east. If the signal tower was still operational, I might be able to reach someone. I stayed low, every movement calculated. The ghillie suit kept me invisible, but even so, I was careful not to brush against anything too dry or brittle. Sound travels differently when silence is all that remains. Halfway there, I spotted another group, 6 of them, just standing, not wandering, not hunting, just standing in a circle like forgotten statues. Then one lifted its head. It sniffed the air and turned straight toward me. I froze. There was no way it saw me. I was buried in foliage, camouflaged head to toe. My scent was masked. I hadn't made a sound. But it kept coming. Not fast, not slow, just steady. I exhaled quietly and adjusted my rifle. One shot. It crumpled, but the others started moving too. I crawled backward inch by inch, my boots pressed down the grass without a whisper. I became the dirt, the earth itself. I had to. And yet they still came. I don't know how, but they sensed me. I took out 2 more before I decided to move. Not crawl, move, fast. I broke from cover and sprinted across a dry wash, the ghillie suit flapping like loose seaweed behind me. Their footsteps followed. Unhurried, dragging. That might be what saved me. Their slowness. I reached the comms relay by 9:04 a.m. It was abandoned. The door had been torn off its hinges, claw marks along the steel frame. Inside, it looked like someone had tried to barricade themselves with filing cabinets. Didn't work. But the main console was still intact. I booted it up and typed in the emergency override. Active Outbreak level red flashed across the screen. A blinking cursor invited me to send a message. I keyed in a simple transmission. Observer 1 reporting. Unknown entity sighted. Civilian casualties confirmed. Request immediate evac or instruction. Coordinates attached. I hit send. Then I waited. Nothing. Just that blinking cursor again. The signal was transmitting, but no one was receiving. I checked the map on the wall. The closest inhabited town was 5 miles downhill, Jasper Ridge. Maybe they had made it. Maybe. I grabbed a backup radio, reloaded my mags, and started hiking the ridge trail east of the relay station. It was 9:41 a.m. By 10 a.m., I saw the smoke. Jasper Ridge had not made it. Black plumes rose from behind the trees like dying breaths. I moved cautiously, keeping to the brush line. The whole place was silent, except for the occasional crack of wood shifting under weight it no longer could bear. A pickup truck had crashed into a diner. Flames danced from its hood. No sign of the driver. There was movement near the pharmacy. 2 figures, not the staggering kind. They were armed. I moved closer. Through my scope, I saw a man and a woman, maybe in their 30s. She had a baseball bat. He had a rifle that he clearly didn't know how to use properly. His finger was on the trigger the whole time. They were alive, real people. I almost revealed myself right then and there. Then the woman screamed. One of those things had come from behind the truck. The man panicked, raised his rifle and missed. The creature lunged. I didn't think. I took the shot. It fell inches from the woman's feet. She looked around, confused. The man stared up at the ridgeline. I stayed hidden. No sense risking my position yet. I needed more information. I watched as they retreated into the pharmacy, dragging a metal shelf to block the entrance. I marked the time, 10:17 a.m. It was only 4 hours in, and the world was already being buried. I moved along the ridgeline, searching for vantage points, mapping escape routes. I found more signs of chaos. Cars abandoned mid-drive, doors flung open, clothing on the ground like people had just vanished out of them. At 11 a.m., I found an emergency broadcast tower still receiving weak signals. Only fragments came through. Stay indoors, avoid contact, they are not human. Byte transmission confirmed. Military installations compromised. Repeat, if you are hearing this, help will not come. I turned the volume down. Even the wind didn't argue with that. I found a shelter on the edge of town, a small ranger station, half buried in rock. It was empty, but not destroyed. Inside was a map, canned supplies, a cot. I took a moment to rest. Just a moment. The sun outside was blinding against the haze of ash and smoke. By 11:42 a.m., I was back out. I spotted a larger group moving near the old schoolyard, at least 20 of them, clustered together like ants on a carcass. I thought about the man and woman. Maybe there were more like them, hiding, surviving. Maybe I could help. But then came the noise. Something I hadn't heard until that moment. Laughter. Not human laughter, not even animal. Just a noise that wanted to be laughter but didn't know how. And it came from the trees behind me. It didn't sound right. That laughter. It was like someone trying to mimic joy, but only having heard it once in a dream. Sharp, broken sounds strung together without rhythm or sense. The kind of noise that makes the hairs on your arms stand up because your brain doesn't know how to categorize it. I spun around slowly, my rifle sweeping across the tree line. The ghillie suit rustled gently with the wind, blending me once again into the forest's embrace. But the laughter had stopped. Silence crept back in, heavy and oppressive. Then I saw it. A silhouette deeper within the shadows, barely distinguishable from the surrounding bark and branches. It crouched low, too low for any normal human gait. The figure twitched as though something inside it were struggling to escape. It didn't move like the others. This one was faster, smarter, watching. I backed away, keeping my rifle trained, but it didn't follow. It only stared, waiting. By noon, I had circled around the eastern bluff and returned to an overlook above the town. From there, I could see the pharmacy again. It was quiet. I hoped the man and woman were still alive inside. But the strange one in the woods kept pulling at my mind like a splinter I couldn't remove. This wasn't just a sickness spreading across the population. There was variation, evolution. And it was happening fast. I remained still for 20 minutes, observing every corner, every rooftop, every patch of shadow. That's when I noticed the schoolyard again. The creatures were gone, but something had been arranged on the blacktop. Symbols, circles, patterns in blood, not fresh, but deliberate, precise. This wasn't random. Someone, or something, was thinking. That changed everything. At 12:41 p.m., I made the decision to descend into the town. The ranger station had a service tunnel leading toward the municipal building. I followed it. Slowly. Every footstep was measured. It was quiet underground, but not peaceful. It felt like the earth itself was holding its breath. When I reached the municipal building, I climbed through a maintenance hatch and into a darkened boiler room. The air was warm, damp. I could hear the drip of condensation from rusted pipes. I paused, listened. Footsteps above me, quick, light. I crept up the stairs, rifle shouldered. The lobby was empty. But there were signs someone had been here recently. Maps spread across a table, markers circling various points, including the school, pharmacy, and radio tower. Someone else had been trying to understand this. That's when I heard the voices. Human. I followed the sound carefully, staying in the shadows. On the second floor, I found them. A small group. 5 survivors. All armed but scared. A woman in a sheriff's uniform led them. Her voice was calm but tense. "We'll wait till dark, then move east toward the ranger trail. That sniper who took out the walker at the pharmacy, he's still out there. Maybe more military are coming." I could have revealed myself, but I didn't, not yet. Instead, I left a signal, one they'd understand. I used my knife to carve a simple arrow into the desk near the exit, pointing toward the overlook I'd used earlier. I had to keep moving. At 1:17 p.m., I found the church on the north end of town. Its stained glass windows had been shattered. The front doors were barricaded from the inside. I circled around, climbing the exterior wall using an old drain pipe. Once on the roof, I eased open the bell tower hatch and lowered myself in. The sanctuary below was dark except for flickering candles. Someone was there. One person. A priest, or what remained of one. He stood motionless at the altar, murmuring something under his breath. I moved closer. Silent. Then I heard it. He was repeating names, a list, over and over. Not in prayer, but in rhythm. Like a chant. Then he turned. His eyes were gone, both sockets empty. His hands were covered in dried blood, and his mouth stretched into a grin far too wide. He whispered one last name, mine. I didn't hesitate one shot. He dropped where he stood, but there were no wounds, no blood. The body just collapsed like it had finished its part. That was the moment I knew. This wasn't a simple outbreak. It wasn't just about infection or survival. There was intent. Something was guiding this. At 2 p.m., I returned to the schoolyard to inspect the symbols up close. What I saw there chilled me more than any creature could. Handprints. Dozens of them, smeared across the ground. Some large, some impossibly small. All arranged in a spiral leading toward the center. At the middle was a child's backpack. Inside were crayons, half a sandwich, and a note that read, "If they find you, don't let them hear your name." That was all. I backed away slowly. No footsteps followed, but I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. From every window, every doorway, every tree. By 3:12 p.m., I had circled back toward the eastern perimeter of town. I spotted the man and woman from earlier. They had joined the sheriff's group, moving fast, heading toward the bluff. Good. They were smart enough to follow the signal. I moved ahead to scout. That's when the ground trembled. Not from impact, but from sound. A deep humming resonance that seemed to rise from the earth itself. It was coming from the valley. I rushed back to my original sniper post. What I saw nearly made me drop my rifle. The entire valley was filled, hundreds, maybe thousands. Standing still, all facing the same direction, toward the old dam. And in the center, a tall figure, not moving, not breathing. Covered in bones. Its head tilted up as if listening to something none of us could hear. Then every creature in the valley dropped to its knees. Like worship, like surrender. I took a photo, just one. Then I ran. At 4:07 p.m., I met the sheriff's group on the upper ridge. I revealed myself slowly, arms raised. They recognized the ghillie suit. "Are you military?" she asked. "Was," I said. "Not sure what I am now." They had questions. I didn't have answers. We made a plan. Move east, follow the mountain stream, find shelter. Avoid names, avoid sound. As the sun began to set, we reached a cave network I knew from old patrol maps. Safe. Defensible. Inside, the sheriff lit a single lantern. No one spoke for a long time. Then she asked, "What do you think it is?" I looked around at the faces of those still alive, still trying. I thought of the priest, the laughter in the trees, the valley full of kneeling shadows. And I said the only thing I could. I don't think it's just an outbreak. I think something woke up, and now it wants to be remembered. At 6 p.m., the cave grew cold. By morning, we knew we couldn't stay in the caves. The howling hadn't stopped all night. It circled the hills like a tide, not fast, not loud, just constant, like a reminder that we were surrounded, hunted. The sheriff woke me first. She didn't have to speak. I could see it in her eyes. The fear, the determination. We packed light, no fires, no talking above a whisper. The group was down to 4 adults and 2 teenagers. One of them, a boy named Noah, was carrying a handheld radio. Not military issue, civilian band. Still, it was something. As we moved east through the rocks, I kept sweeping our perimeter with the scope. The ghillie suit still gave me the edge in this terrain, but it also painted a target on my back. If something out there remembered the shot from the pharmacy tower, they might be waiting for me to lower my guard. We moved for hours without seeing another soul. At 11:43 a.m., we reached the edge of the forest near Dry Creek. The stream had once been a trickle of snowmelt, but now it was almost dry, mud-caked and scattered with broken antlers and old shoes. Signs of animals that had fled and never come back. Signs of people who tried the same. We kept walking. That's when we heard it. A voice crackling through Noah's handheld radio. It wasn't a distress call. It was a song. An old lullaby, faint and broken, warped by static. "Go to sleep, my little darling. The sky is falling. Hush, don't cry." It looped again and again. Noah tried switching channels, but every band had the same transmission. Every single one. That's when the sheriff motioned for us to stop. We listened. A second sound, layered beneath the lullaby. Breathing. Not human. Deep. Wet. Ragged. The boy dropped the radio. We all heard it then. A distorted whisper that rose through the melody. "We remember you." Then silence. The radio died. At 12:06 p.m., I took point again. We crossed the creek bed and entered a narrow ravine I knew from training exercises. It funneled up toward a fire lookout on Granite Ridge. If we could reach it, we'd have high ground and visibility for miles. That was the plan. Until we found the bodies. 3 of them, dressed like hikers. Gear scattered, but not stolen. No wounds. Just empty expressions, mouths open like they died mid-scream, eyes covered by their own hands. And around them, carved into the rock with something sharp, were symbols. Not letters, not numbers. Shapes. I drew them in my field notebook. Something about them made my head hurt, like I was trying to read a language I almost understood. The sheriff pulled me aside. "We can't bring the others past this," she whispered. She was right. The teenagers were barely holding it together. I offered to scout ahead, reach the tower, then signal back. She nodded. "Be careful, you're not the only one watching anymore." I left them with a flare and instructions. Wait for the green light. By 1:22 p.m., I reached the tower. Or what was left of it. The fire lookout was charred black, roof caved in, windows smashed from the inside. But the ladder was intact. I climbed slowly. Inside, I found something unexpected. A camera. A wildlife trail cam, duct taped to the desk, still recording. The red light blinked steadily. The memory card was full. I popped it out, slid it into my field laptop. The footage showed the inside of the tower. Daylight, then night, then flashes. Not lightning. Flashes of movement. Something crawling across the walls and ceiling like a shadow trapped in the wrong dimension. Too many limbs, no eyes. But then it stopped, and turned, and looked straight into the lens. The feed cut to black. That thing, it knew it was being watched. I ejected the card, took it with me. And that's when I saw the figure on the ridge, watching me. Not moving, just standing there. It wasn't one of the creatures. Not quite. It wore something like clothing, tattered and stained. A long coat, perhaps, but no face. Just skin stretched over bone where the features should have been. Smooth like melted wax. It raised one hand. Not in greeting, in warning. Then it vanished over the ridge. I didn't wait to follow. I fired the green flare. At 2:07 p.m., the group reached the base of the tower. They hadn't been followed. We regrouped, ate, drank, planned our next move. Noah stared at the broken tower. "What happened here?" he asked. I didn't have the words, just the feeling that we weren't uncovering the past. We were walking straight into the future, one built from memories we never made. At 3:35 p.m., we decided to keep moving east toward the Highland Research Facility. If anyone had answers, it would be the scientists there. The trail was steep and slick with moss. The air grew colder, sharper. No birds, no insects, not even the wind. At 4:09 p.m., we reached a wooden sign split down the middle. "Welcome to Black Hollow." We hadn't heard of it. But the map confirmed it. An old, decommissioned ranger village, evacuated years ago after a forest fire. As we entered, I kept the rifle up, eyes scanning every rooftop. The homes were empty. Not ruined, not burned, just abandoned. Chairs still pushed back from tables. Plates with food long rotted. Toys in yards, rusted from dew, as if everyone left at once, like something had called them away. Noah pointed to a swing set. "It's moving," he said. We all turned. One swing was swaying gently, but there was no wind. I aimed through the scope. Nothing. Then I noticed the boot prints. Tiny, fresh, heading toward the woods. I hesitated. The sheriff stepped forward. "We keep moving," she said firmly. And we did. At 5:14 p.m., we spotted the first satellite dish. Just over the next ridge, the silhouette of the research station came into view. Tall fences, antennas, motion sensor lights. But no guards, no vehicles. The gate was open. We stepped through. Inside, the labs had been trashed, computers smashed, glass shattered, notes burned in piles. But on the third floor, in a reinforced server room, we found something intact, a terminal still powered. I logged in. The files were partially corrupted, but I found one labeled Project Remembrance. Inside were logs, reports from weeks before the outbreak, experiments with signal frequencies. Deep sound resonance meant to stimulate memory retention. Broadcast through soil, air, and water. They believed they could awaken long-lost parts of the brain. But the final logs showed a warning. Subjects began experiencing shared dreams, hallucinations of places they'd never been, names they'd never heard, but somehow remembered. And then, the final entry. The signal is not creating memories. It's calling them back. Not from us, from them. That's when we heard the sirens. Not from outside. From deep below. A door opened in the floor. A stairwell descending into darkness. A red light blinked slowly beneath it. Noah looked down, pale as snow. "They're waiting," he whispered. "We had two choices, go down or run." We chose the only one that felt like an answer. We descended. Step after step into the belly of the research station, into the place they had built to hide their mistakes. And as we moved deeper, the air changed. Colder, thicker, not stale, but old. Like breathing dust from a sealed tomb. At the bottom, we found a single hallway lined with mirrors. Cracked, warped, but everyone showed us different images. Not our reflections. Scenes from memories we'd never lived. The sheriff standing in a burned nursery. Noah weeping in front of a faceless mother. Me, kneeling in a battlefield covered in ash, holding a rifle shaped like bone. I stepped back. Every mirror shattered. The hallway turned black. And a voice echoed from all sides. "We don't forget. We wait. And now we remember you." The door at the end opened. Inside was a chamber. A pool of liquid like obsidian glass. Above it, floating, was a heart, beating slowly, connected to wires, surrounded by symbols. It opened its eye. One single eye. Looking at us, I raised my rifle. It didn't flinch. It only spoke again. This time, in our own voices, overlapping. "You brought us back. Now we remember how to become." I fired. The chamber screamed. The floor cracked. We ran. As the building shook and the walls collapsed behind us, we scrambled back into the daylight, just in time to see the valley split open. Black shapes poured out like spilled ink. Not creatures. Memories. Living ones. Twisting. Searching. Hungry. We kept running. And I don't know how we made it out. Only that by nightfall, we reached the far ridge and looked back. Where the research station stood was now a crater. And from within it, laughter. The same laughter I'd heard in the woods. Only now, it had a voice. A purpose. It was becoming something. And we had given it the first name. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe. Your support keeps these creepypastas coming. Until next time, stay alert, stay safe, and never ignore the feeling that something is watching.